Good afternoon, Lion Golf Academy members and guests, and welcome back to today's show. And yes, today is the first day in Coachella Valley. It's in the 90s and it is freezing outside, so I had to bundle up a little bit for you. But today we're going to be talking about one of the biggest myths I hear. Husbands teaching their wives, grandparents teaching their grandkids. Keep your head still, keep your head down, and keep your eye on the ball. Because I've seen a lot of amateur golfers destroy their emotions by focusing on keeping their head so still that their whole body gets too rigid and they start flipping and throwing their hands. Annika Sorenstam we're going to take a look at today, but also this man right here, Duval.
And both of these individuals reached the first place rankings in their selected fields, so come on!
Stop listening to all that nonsense. We're going to talk about the biggest myths, so stay with me. Oh, you know what? I'm just so sick of you. Why do you keep bothering me?
Don't you want to tell everybody about the 4,000 subscriber giveaway?
Oh, that's right. You know what? I knew maybe that's why I had to go to Wichita yesterday to find you, but thank you for reminding me. For our 4,000th giveaway, we might be trying to put together a little get-together. If you're in the Southern California area, we might put a couple of groups together, go out and play a skins game, or have some fun, maybe record it for the show. If you are interested, let me know in the comments below, and we'll start the arrangements. But other than that, let's get going. Let's talk about the biggest myth and what you should do to avoid these myths to keep you from quitting this game. "72 wins, 10 major championships, 7-time LPGA money leader, 7-time player of the year. How with this head moving up and down?" Well, she doesn't have the most textbook style golf swing, nor is it one that you want to try and emulate, because there are a little bit of these compensatory motions. We're going to take a look at some of these compensatory motions and why her head, as well as Duval's head, typically moves up and away before she hits the golf ball. And it has to do with her setup, it has to do with her motions, her plane work. But the most important thing is, please do not focus on your head remaining level. Look at that little circle around her head, and you will see some motion back and forth. You specifically see motion going up as she strikes the golf ball. And this is one of my biggest pet peeves when I'm instructing and I hear fathers teaching their sons, husbands teaching their wives. Babe, you got to keep your head still. Keep that head still. And I look over at the student and they're so focused on keeping their head still that they stop turning, they stop releasing, they're flipping to keep that head down and still. This can really destroy natural tendencies when you are developing. So if Annika was so focused on her head staying still, we would have never heard of Annika Sorenstam. So keep that in mind while we go through this. This is all cause and effect. I don't recommend you do any of this stuff. This is purely for educational purposes to give you more confidence in your golf swing, because your golf swing is like your fingerprint. Alright, without boring you guys, I went ahead and drew all our customary lines, and we see that center setup check on the left side. That red line right through the arches of the heel is connected to her lower plane line and her spine angle wonderfully, so we know she is in a very good balance. And remember from yesterday's video, balance is key, and footwork will allow you to remain in that posture. We will see her remain in the posture for the most part. And we're going to take a look at the right side of the screen, because these two directly affect each other. And this is why for my Sunday Life series, I would like students, when they do send me their video for me to help them out on, send me both, because if I just look at one of these, it's hard to see what's going on and what's causing and what's affecting certain positions. Now, with the great thing, and this is another ode to what I'm trying to help you guys and girls out there watching, is your setup. No need to forward press. And here we have another former #1 golfer in the world who did not forward press. And this is probably why she was #1, because there's less things that you have to compensate for. And we take a look at that right side, we see the shoulder tilt, and we see that spine angle line running right through the hands, and guess what? Right at that golf ball. So there's no two circles that we now have to reconnect in a very short amount of time. But take a look at what she does with her spine angle, because on the first part of her takeaway, we will see that her hands do deviate slightly above that lower plane line, and that's attributed just because of this shoulder leveling out. Now this plays a huge part in her downswing, because at the top of the swing we will see that she has to get that club back down to that lower plane line, and she needs to increase the tilting initially, and she actually falls slightly back, but her head needs to start to come up a little sooner to help her fall back and maintain that spine angle. So again, for you who have been following me, every golf swing is like a domino. If you start changing the middle of your swing or the top of your swing or your impact without addressing why you you are there, your swing is just going to collapse and explode. So you have to understand why things are in certain positions before you start tinkering with stuff. And you can only do that with a qualified coach. And I say qualified because there are so many people out there on the range. You have no idea who is qualified. What I recommend you do is contact the golf course in your area and ask them who is contracted to teach at your facility, because they had to be vetted to teach. You want to avoid those websites where you just fill in your information and some random guy contacts you and said, I'll meet you at this range at this time. He's probably not even licensed to be out there or accredited to be out there. So make sure you support your local pro who went through all the vetting process, because that's a huge thing. So we do see at the top of her swing, we start to see a slight lateral slide, but she's turning more centered because of that narrow width of her stance. But what we see is a slight increase of tilt the wrong way. So we start to look at where is her center pointing. It is pointing to the ground. So this is where she has to make up for this, and we'll see that lower body really slide out to that impact line, and her right shoulder on the left side of the screen really tilt down initially to assist this spine angle correction. And in order to do that, her head, and she did a pretty good job in this swing, but I've seen videos where her head really comes off and moves with the shoulders and with the chest turn, much like Duval. Duval had the same motion. We'll take a brief look at Duval at the end, where you have to move your whole head up and with your turn to allow you to tilt or move or get the weight distribution. So again, please, I know that you mean well when you're trying to help your son or your grandkid or your wife or your husband to tell them to keep their head still, but sometimes you could be limiting their motions and hurting their swing and development, which I know you don't want to do. So let's take a look at that first move on the way down. We can do the triangle check and see how much her hands do remain on her natural path, and that's about straight down from the center of the triangle. And we see she just has done a good job on the left side of staying in her posture, but what we also see is this power V on the right side, and this is the power V that she is going to utilize to strike on that golf ball. So we take that first move down, we're going to check that triangle on the right side, and you can see that. Look at those hands. They drop straight down. Now we initiate the turn, so the hands will start to move our view right of that triangle, which is good. They've already passed the triangle. Once you've passed that triangle, hey, now you can get moving because you're already on the right path. Look at the right side of the screen. Now we see the knees bump first to the impact line. The hips don't quite get over there. They almost get over to the impact line, but you see the chest. It stayed back, so she moved slightly back, and then she's bumping to now realign her spine angle the correct way. So now let's draw this in green on the right side, and we see that red line was at the top of her backswing. Now the green line is going to be slightly ahead of the golf ball because of that slight move left, but now we see that tilt has changed back, so you see her head is more of a central point while her body slides and tilts around her, which is fine. There's plenty of great players that do that. Other players move with the body turn again, which is fine. There's no one way to do things, but some ways are easier for the average golfer, and I think this way is slightly easier just because of that setup. Now, if you look at the one on the left side, this is what she has been slightly criticized for in the past, is the fact that she can get trapped, which means that the hands are a little bit too high and the club falls below that plane line, and this can cause some misses, and we do see the occasional miss even from the best in the world, but this is where her timing really took over. And if we keep going on in the golf swing, we can see on the right side of the screen, look at her hands, they're just touching that right thigh, and she's been able to hold this angle for that nice long time. The hands are now returning back into the front of the chest. So this, from this point on, it's timing. Now, the great thing about this is because she has adjusted her spine angle correctly based on that setup, she doesn't have to reconnect these two circles that we always talk about when you have a forward press. She doesn't have to get so flippy, because if you look at the ball position now in relation to her body, it is still on that lead shoulder, because she did that counter move on the way down. So by the counter move, she shifted her ball position from the right shoulder to the left shoulder. So now that gave her some room so she doesn't have to flip. So we take a look at this motion here. We see a nice release as we get down into impact. We have a forward press, a natural forward press. And the only reason it's natural is because of that bump And now that spine angle got ahead, so now her hands can catch up to that spine angle, which, guess what, is leading the golf ball. So as she strikes it, her hands will be in this position. Let's go to the next frame, right there. So there's the hands meeting that correct floor press, and the hands just release naturally and nice and slow and controlled. So if you look at her swing over and over again, you will notice it is a very controlled motion. It's not the prettiest, but it's very controlled. Her tempo is really good. Her timing is phenomenal, and she has a great neutral grip, which allows everything. She's the queen of neutral. I can just call it that. Neutral grip, neutral setup, not a lot of motion back and forth, up or down, and her head is free. Her spine angle is more free because it doesn't have to maintain itself because of this exaggerated floor press. And she's not a body golfer or a hands golfer. She is the neutral golfer, where she utilizes her rotation and her timing of her hands. And for those wondering what that light is, back before it was a radar-based launch monitor, this was a camera-based, and it would actually need to take a camera of the golf ball right at impact, because it would catch two frames. It would catch the frame just at impact, and the next frame it'll digitally connect two dimples and do the math of how it moved, and then it would come up with the algorithm and say, okay, the ball moved X amount in X amount of time and X amount of space. This is how far you hit it. So they weren't as accurate as they are now, which is radar based, but that's what you see that light flashing for. But the great thing with this follow through is look at how high everything finished because of the head now just moving along with that rotation and that turn. So we finished nice and tall and high, and this is no pressure on the lower back. A lot easier because the hands have basically moved. The furthest left they go is that right shoulder. The furthest right they go is that right shoulder. So her hands are just kind of moving in that box in front of her, which is why she was able to win so much, which is why she's still able to play very well and competitively. I believe if she just gave up her family and said, let me go back to playing the tour level in her 50s, she could probably go back to winning. That's how consistent the swing can be. So if you want to emulate anybody, look at this one, because you have to look at her setup and how much easier things work around each other and provides an easier, more relaxed follow through, which is what we're trying to get the average golfer so they don't blow a lower back like me. Now, real quick, let's take a look at David Duval. Reach number 1. Look at that head. The head just keeps moving to allow the body to turn. And we'll do a more detailed swing analysis on David Duval, but just look at how that head rotation has to start to go from here, boom, all the way through, because he has to keep his hands out in front of his chest. But this move here avoided him snapping, hooking by keeping his hands out of it until after impact. In order to do that, he gets his head all the way with that turn and tilt. So there's many reasons why you can need to do your head motion like this. So again, even though people might mean well and they're giving you the best advice that they know, remember, there are trained professionals out there that can really help you, and we are doctors to help you with your golf swing. So I hope that helps you. I'll see you next time. And don't forget, this Sunday, live series, 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, and there's no World Series game on, so guaranteed to be on this weekend. And we might be celebrating a 1 or 2-0 Dodger lead. Let's just see. I'll see you guys next time. Fairways and Green.